What is up, everybody? We are going through some of the biggest news stories in the day today. This was a big story that we had just here in after hours. Trump loves to drop some of these news headlines after futures open, but announcements of a ceasefire between Iran and Israel, talking about it starting in about a day from now. This went up around 6 p.m. Eastern on Monday. So this looks like this will be starting around 6 p.m. Eastern. My guess is that's around midnight time in the region on Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that. The markets did have an initial move higher on this story here. As you can see on this next screen on the Robinhood Legend shout out, there is a lot of green here in after hours. QQQ, this is a 5-minute chart. Apple, initial move higher. I also pulled up ExxonMobil. So that one's moving lower. Stuff like USO, oil, also moving lower. SPY in general, moving higher. So this was one of the big news stories of the day. There was a couple other news stories that I did find interesting, though, and I want to run through on here. A lot of it was geopolitical, but not everything was. So if we look over at the daily recap, this was one story that came out earlier that I think we were tracking pretty closely, is that Iran did launch a couple missiles at U.S. bases in Qatar. There was a Trump response saying, hey, thank you for thanking them for not escalating here, saying they gave them pre-warning. And, it kind of led to the point in the ceasefire. So that was one of the talks from today, but there was a couple other announcements from the day that I wanted to go through. Fed's Bowman saying it's time to consider adjusting the policy, open to cutting rates as soon as the July FOMC meeting. The odds for a July rate cut went from pretty much non-existent up to 20% now. We'll see how that ends up developing, but we have now had two Fed presidents come out and say that they think that we not only should be cutting rates soon or whatever, but that at the next meeting, a rate cut could be on the table. Still not the main thought, but it's growing in there a little bit. Another story from today that a lot of people was gravitating toward was New York announcing plans to build a large nuclear power facility, the first major new U.S. plant undertaken in more than 15 years. I know nuclear has been a pretty hot theme, so I actually went and got the article here. It is a Wall Street Journal article. I know that this was announced in a couple of places. Said that in an interview that she has directed the state's public electricity to add at least 1 gigawatt hour of new nuclear power generation to its aging fleet. A lot of this article is going through the timing of it. And you can read it here. The timing of these power plants, they take a long time to set up. And that was one of the stuff that she's that she was pointing to as a reason that there maybe hasn't been as much investment in something that they want to get into. So hopefully this is a less than a decade-long project. But that was a major news story there. Another big one that a lot of people were gravitating towards was this Novo Nordisk and Hims news. So Novo Nordisk terminating their collaboration with Hims Health. Direct access to Wegovy will no longer be available to Hims Health. And they actually put out a little bit of a not great report. I have that as well. Ooh, wrong place. So this is the PR that came out with it. And it's not just one of those, there was a lot of negative words in here. So collaboration of over a month has ended based on Hims and Hers deceptive promotion and selling of illegitimate knockoff versions of Wegovy that put the patients at risk. There was a specific thing about it being personalized, and was the one that they had a problem about. Novo Nordisk has a couple types of these deals with different companies that are doing this kind of what Hims and Hers is doing, and this was the only one that they so far have taken action against. So that was definitely something to keep an eye on. There was a personalization aspect of it right here, actually. Over 1 month into the collaboration of Hims and Hers, Hims has failed to adhere to the law, which prohibits mass sales of compounded drugs under the false guidance or guise of personalization. And that seemed to be what this was about. So Hims and Hers stock was down about 30% today. Let's actually end up pulling it up. Maybe it had a little bit more luck in after hours, not looking like it. Initial move here in the top left, finished the day down about 30%. It would close around 40, up here at 44. So Hims and Hers Health, a little bit rough, but recovering a tiny bit in after hours. Sorry for banging the table right there. That was definitely one that we were keeping an eye on. Let me get this back up and get back over to the Catalyst Watch or the. Okay, so the next one that I thought was interesting, Amazon launched second batch of Project Kuiper satellites. This is kind of their answer. Them trying to compete with SpaceX and Elon Musk. Of course, they launched on a United Launch Alliance rocket, which I believe is, I don't even want to say who. I think it's an alliance between Boeing and Lockheed or something, but I could be wrong there. It's it's the old head players in this trying to not use Elon Musk, and it probably was more expensive. But I did see a lot of these space names in general were up today. There was a couple other stories, but I know like an ASTS, a Rocket Mobile, sorry, Rocket Lab, etc. We're moving higher. ASTS, Space Mobile. So I was getting that combined a little bit in my head. This story in After Hours was also interesting. Starbucks reportedly considering a full sale of its business in China. Keep an eye there. The U.S. the U.S. House of Representatives has banned the use of WhatsApp on official devices. The reason that they were giving behind this was around Meta lacking disclosures about how they're protecting data. And yeah, Meta did come out and say that they don't agree with this assessment. Something to keep an eye on. Obviously, they would come out and say that. This was another thing that I actually really want to talk about. The first robo-taxi rides happened to the public. They were invited people. There's a lot of these videos going around. I want to go in and look at Sawyer's page a little bit here. So let's pull this back up. Get over here. Pull this. But people are starting to ride around in the robo-taxis. If you follow Sawyer, Farzad, Omar, so many other people have been posting a bunch of their rides. Here's an example, raw 4K footage from a 16-minute ride in a robo-taxi. Mostly going off without a hitch, no major incidents. If you're really digging around, there's been one or two things where like, hey, it kind of swerved a little bit into a lane when it maybe shouldn't have. There was definitely one thing that I saw there. And there was one or two other small stuff going on, but as you can see, safety driver is just there. Not much going on. There is actually something that people are... I don't want to get there. But if you look at his right hand around here, everyone is saying this. That all these safety drivers have had their fingers around here, which is something a lot of people have noticed. So I don't know if there's anything there. Maybe there is some sort of like back-end precautions to be looking at. I don't know. But it doesn't seem like that safety driver has done anything in any of the videos that I have seen so far. Seems to be going off without a hitch, and the stock has been doing pretty good. At least today it was up 8-9%. You can see, though, if you go through Sawyer and a bunch of these other pages, there is a lot of these videos of the robo-taxi going around, no one in that driver's seat. And one of the things that people were pointing to a lot, let's take that out of all caps. Joseph Carlson, he kind of posted this a little bit. I thought this video was kind of funny. Did he delete it? No, but there was a video of a guy dancing in front of the cybercab, in front of the robo-taxi, and like it's really kind of celebrating in a super cringe way. And then a Waymo vehicle just drove right behind it. So there was something there. Let me end up trying to pull that up here. I think I saw it here too on Farzad's channel. But yeah, nonetheless, people are comparing this to Waymo and Tesla, the first launch. We'll see how it ends up scaling up. The first couple of days of Tesla's FSD rollout are going at least pretty decent. And many of you guys know I do the GigaCast, or I'm on the back end of the GigaCast with Sawyer and Omar, so I'm excited to hear more of their takes. A couple more of the big stories from today. Google had one. Supermicro announcing a $2 billion convertible debt offering. I saw Chewy had something too. Wolfspeed announcing that they are going to be filing for bankruptcy, I believe, the end of this month, next week. I thought this story was kind of interesting. FICO is planning to introduce 2 new credit scores that incorporate buy now, pay later data. This was a little bit intriguing for me. Are we not incorporating the BNPL data as of right now? But nonetheless, something to keep an eye on. The scores will help lenders make more accurate decisions about consumers' creditworthiness, especially for those who borrow for the first time using these payment plans. A couple of the stocks that hit new 52-week highs today. Microsoft actually new all-time highs. IBM all-time highs. So a lot of these might be in there. ASTS was an example of a name doing pretty well, but there's a couple names on this list. I want to quickly go back up to the top of this and look at the heat map for the day, which shows you a little bit of how every stock did. Tesla had a strong day. Energy obviously a little weaker in after hours as tensions in the Middle East start to cool down. Fears around oil prices maybe going away. I haven't checked in a second, so maybe everything's changed. IBM looking strong. Tesla obviously outperforming. As far as the indexes, was up about 1% on all of them. And when we look at the best and worst performers, Tesla is the best performing stock in the S&P 500. FICO had that story today, but Northern Trust, Arista Networks, and a few others here. Looking over to the calendar for tomorrow, Carnival reports earnings in the morning, CCL, FedEx in the afternoon, FDX is one to keep an eye on. When we're looking at the macro calendar for tomorrow, you should be looking out for Fed Hammock speech. Jerome Powell will be testifying in front of Congress. Watch out for that. That is at 10 a.m. Eastern. Now, what you should be expecting with this Powell press conference, and if you're watching this on Tuesday as well, this is going to be the same thing for Wednesday when he talks in front of the Senate, is a pre-planned 5-minute speech, and then it's going to be about 3-4 hours of every single person on that committee, both Senate Republicans and Democrats, Senate and House. A lot of political theater and questions and commentary around that. A lot of that is what's going to be. There might be 1 or 2 interesting tidbits said here, but you're going to have to listen to 8 hours of pretty annoying content there. As you can see, there's a lot of Fed presidents speaking, at least 4 on top of Powell. So expect more in that language. When we're looking over at the Catalyst Watch from Seeking Alpha, this has a couple other weird different events on it. You never know. For example, we have this growth conference with a couple of these smaller names. HPE has a keynote address that they got going on, and a few other things here. And yeah, that is a lot of what to look out there. If you enjoy this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a like. One's it there.